Talk about this story. Leela Jacinto from our Foreign Affairs desk with me in the studio. Hello, Leela.
Hi.
Look, as well as Donald Trump rolling back a little bit his language, as we heard in that soundbite there are also growing signs that a number of countries in the region are imploring the United States not to carry out military action in Iran. Explain to us then what is at stake for some of these other powers.
There's a lot at stake. I mean, Iran is a vast country. It shares borders, 7 land borders with 7 different countries. So any instability inside Iran or any violent fragmentation of the Iranian state could have implications across borders and across regions. And you're absolutely right. There have been increasing reports in U.S. media organizations of the Persian Gulf states, primarily Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Oman, lobbying the Trump administration against strikes or attacks on Iran. They have been trying to make the case that any instability in Iran could rattle the oil markets and which could hurt the U.S. economy. But primarily, it's a matter, the whole question is of blowback in the region. Now, bear in mind, these are Sunni Gulf Arab states. You know, they are no friends, no fans of the Shiite regime in Tehran. They have had their own security issues with Tehran allied groups. Saudi Arabia, in particular, would really like to see the Iranian military and nuclear capability weakened. But what they fear much more is a weakening of the Iranian state. And what was notable over the past few days have been reports, these are Saudi officials telling news organizations that Saudi Arabia told U.S. officials that they would not allow the use of Saudi airspace if there were strikes in Iran. Now, when it comes to Iran, you know, such a vast country, there are all regional players that also have stakes in what's happening. One of the regional countries that have been most vocal about pushing for regime change in Iran has been Israel. And Israel has been very overt about it this time with these latest anti-regime protests. But increasingly, Middle East analysts are warning that Israel's security objective is pretty clear. You know, Tehran backs Hezbollah and has consistently backed what it calls the axis of resistance on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. But the thing is, increasingly, analysts are warning that, you know, Israel is pursuing an agenda of weakening central authority, weakening central states, whether it's in Syria and in Iran. And in Iran, we've had nearly 50 years of a stable power, a despicable power. Nobody really is a fan of this authority, but any breakup in this region has dimensions. Now, one of the countries that is really in opposition to the Israeli position is Turkey. Turkey shares a border with Iran, and there have been reports that Turkish military intelligence is in touch with Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, and they have been warning about fighters crossing the borders. Just this morning, the Turkish Foreign Minister, Hakan Fidan, said that Turkey opposes any U.S. military action in Iran. Now, Hakan Fidan is the former head of Turkey's dreaded intelligence agency, MIT. And as MIT, and as former head of the MIT, Hakan Fidan understands very well what are the ethnic security implications, because Iran is a vast patchwork of ethnic groups. Much of this does not get attention because it's hard to cover Iran. 2, traditionally the peripheries are overlooked. But 3, a lot of what we get is based on overseas communities, and they have their own agendas. So, you know, a lot of what's happening in the peripheries gets overlooked, but regional countries can't afford that.
Okay, well, let's talk then about those ethnic groups. What groups are you referring to, and why is it that it's so important that we focus on them as part of this conversation?
Absolutely right. I mean, Iran is traditionally looked at as just a Shiite power. It's definitely a Shiite majority, but it's really a powder keg. And like quite a number of Middle East countries, it's multi-ethnic, multilinguistic. The majority of the population are Persians. They are around between 50 to 60% of the population. But you have other ethnic linguistic minority groups. You have the Azeris, which is 15 to 16% of the population. There are the Kurds, 10% of the population. They are mostly in the northwest of Iran, near the Iraqi border. Diametrically opposite in the southeastern border are the Baloch. near the Pakistani border. And then you have other ethnic groups. These are primarily Turkic groups. So among these groups, one of the ethnic groups that is consistently and very dramatically opposed to Tehran has been the Kurdish groups. This is for decades. They have several Kurdish militant groups. They've morphed, it's an acronym, it's an alphabet soup of these groups. But one of the groups that Turkey is watching is the PJAK. This is the Iranian arm of the PKK, which is based in Turkey and is recognized as a terror group in Turkey and the US. And there are fears of arms, fighters, crossing this border. Same fears mirrored in Balochistan. This is the Baloch are also Sunnis, so not very allied to the Shiite authorities in Tehran, and they have had multiple militant groups and calls for a separatist movement. Iran accuses Pakistan of supporting these Baloch groups. Pakistan absolutely denies it, and they're sort of credible because Pakistan has its own Baloch separatist movement. In the old days, the Baloch group was Jundullah. Right now there is a group, Jaish al-Adl. Of late, since the uprising in 2022, when Masa Amini, who incidentally is a Kurdish girl, and those protests really picked up in the Kurdish areas, but they also had a lot of protests in the Baloch areas. And when that happened, the Balochi groups now have sort of formed an umbrella group. They're speaking a very secular rhetoric of being against the regime in Tehran. But these are also Islamist militant fighters, and they can just say what they deem, gets the ears of the international population. So, if there is a breakup of central authority, if these groups, which now seem to be coming together in their opposition against Tehran and the regime, but they could also be pursuing their own agendas. And, there are a lot of small arms in Iran. There's a youthful population. Most of them have compulsory military service. There are arms that can cross the border. And so regional players are absolutely, really cautioning against what is Washington's weak point, the lack of a day after plan for Iran.
All right. Thank you very much.